I see the nod. I see the nod, which means we can get started. Here we go. Good evening, everyone. And just before we start the regular agenda, I am calling the meeting to order. Thanks. So forgive me for that. Just before we get everything else going, I'd just like to make a couple of announcements. First of all, this is National Volunteer Week. And at this time, we celebrate the time, talent, and energy they share to strengthen the fabric of our community. And we're extremely grateful to all of our volunteers. We thank those people who make our municipality more vibrant, welcoming, and connected. So we appreciate you all, and we want to make sure that you know you're valued. The other announcement I'd like to make is a reminder that on Monday night coming up, the first Mayor's Town Hall meeting for 2023 will be held at the Wellness Center starting at 6 o'clock. In addition to the in-person option, which we've not had for quite some time, you will be able to access the meeting electronically. And to do that, you would register on the municipal website. So those are the business items. So tonight's meeting, members of the public are invited to participate in the meeting by accessing the live stream on our Middlesex Center YouTube channel, or by contacting the municipal clerk to receive a registration link to join the meeting being held electronically. Members of the public may also attend the meeting in person at the Coldstream Community Center, located at 10227 Ilderton Road in Coldstream. So tonight there are no additions to the agenda. I will look to members of council. Does anyone have to declare pecuniary interest? And I see none. The next item up is a delegation or presentation or petition, and we have Stantec Consulting to present the road needs study overview. And Dean Pettit of Stantec Consulting will be joining us.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you, and the floor is yours whenever you're ready.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just trying to share my screen. I can't seem to. Share. Hello, can you see my screen?
I'm sorry, I forgot to put my mic on. I was saying that we can see your screen, and anytime you're ready, then the floor is yours.
Okay, slideshow. So hello, my name is Dean Pettit. I'm with Stantec Consulting. We did this year's 2022 roads needs study. I'm a pavement engineer here at Stantec Consulting's infrastructure management and pavement engineering group. So I'd like to take you over the results of our 2022 roads needs study. I'm sorry, am I sharing the correct slideshow, or is this the one with the notes?
I think it's pictures only.
Okay, perfect.
Oh no, wait a minute. The top, the picture with the pipes does have the agenda items on. Yeah,
okay,
it's just hiding behind us. There you go.
All right, sorry, I shared the wrong screen. Let me try and get this right. Oh,
the one we've got in our package. We can see it. I can see the agendas. Yep, okay. That's the one we've got.
Perfect. All right, so the agenda, sorry about that. So the agenda, we're gonna go over the background information, the overall network condition, and then our budget analysis. First, at Stantec, we kind of like to do a safety moment at the beginning of every presentation, just to try and keep safety on everyone's mind. Chose tick safety. I'm starting to hear word from our field technicians that we're starting to get into the tick season. We're starting to see them out there. So a few tips: know your environment. So be aware of areas where ticks live and thrive. If you're out for a walk, try and stay on the trails out of the high grass areas. Check yourself. So after spending time in nature, do a thorough body check. If you think there's a chance you could have picked up ticks, generally take some time for them to implant in you. So you do have some time to check and get them away. Raise your protective barrier. So wear long sleeve shirts and long pants to keep your skin protected. We tell our field technicians when they're going out in deep grassed areas to try and even tape their pants to their boots just to keep them from getting onto you. And use insect repellent with DEET for anything that may come into contact. So first, we're going to start off with our background information. So field collection was completed according to the inventory manual for municipal roads in 1991. The entire network was collected, including boundary roads and gravel roads, but only the hard surfaces, so high class bituminous or hot mix asphalt and low class bituminous or surface treated tar and chip roads were included as part of the budget analysis. The reason for this is the gravel roads are already on a consistent program. There was no need for budget analysis for gravel roads. The results of the field collection were uploaded into Stantec's Road Matrix Pavement Management software for analysis. And that's where we ran all the various budget scenarios. So the inventory manual for municipal roads was created in February 1991, or published February 1991. It really is a good pavement management manual. It really was ahead of its time when it came out and set a lot of the ideas that we still use today. So roads needs studies were initiated by MTO back in the 70s, and it was to provide equitable funding subsidies to municipalities. So many of the municipalities discontinued the roads needs studies practice when the conditional funding stopped. The concepts and principles of the roads needs studies and inventory manual are sound. Generally, you're trying to provide an update summary of the road condition ratings, so the existing condition of your road network, and provide current and future physical and financial needs of the road system. So what are your current needs? Like what are the deficiencies and what are the potential future deficiencies? Data collection is visual. There were some measurements completed while we were out there with the surface and platform widths and lengths and stuff like that, trying to make sure all the data was correct. But in general, you're kind of taking a look at the roads and assigning condition ratings based on the visual conditions. Field collection. So we went out there and we did our field collection. The following attributes were collected as part of the investigation. So structural adequacy, which is actually the condition of the road. So if you go out and see a road with a ton of cracking, it's going to have a lower structural adequacy as opposed to roads with a very little visual distress. Ride quality, so how smooth a road can be. This is particularly important with surface treated or low class bituminous roads. Sometimes they look fine, but you can see a lot of depressions and the ride quality just isn't there. We rated the drainage. So visual, like are ditches present? Are they deep enough? Is there anything impeding drainage anywhere? And we gave it a rating based on that. We collected the surface and platform widths. So this is really a requirement. Higher volume roads need a wider surface and wider platform just for safety reasons. And then we also collected horizontal vertical alignment deficiencies. So can you navigate the curves, vertical or horizontal, at the posted speed limit? And do you have adequate stopping sight distances to stop in case there is something on the road in particular locations? This year, new to this year, was we were asked to go out and assess all of the areas where there's been flooding issues. So we went through, did a visual assessment, and came up with the best, or our idea of the root causes for the potential flooding issues. We tried to kind of determine what would be the appropriate way to fix those issues, just to give an idea of what's kind of needed in terms to fix the major drainage issues. An overall pavement condition index was calculated for each section using the structural adequacy and wide quality, and those were uploaded into road matrix for analysis. Time of need. So time of need is a way of thinking about issues using the inventory manual. So the time of need is assigned to each category for each section to help in the decision-making process. So you have your structural adequacy, drainage, geometrics, surface width and capacity. In municipalities such as Middlesex Center, there really aren't any capacity issues. The time of need is a prediction of the time until reconstruction is required. So the categories are now. So structural adequacy would be a pavement that is severely distressed. 1 to 5 years. So in 1 to 5 years, the pavement will no longer be serviceable. 6 to 10 years and adequate. So a few examples of time of need for structural adequacy. So on the top left, you can see a now need road. So it's completely alligatored. There really is no more service life to this road, and it is likely would need full reconstruction to restore the pavement. On the top right, we have a 1 to 5 year need. So this type of a pavement is fairly good condition. If we want to restore the road, we would use a simple resurfacing in order to get it back to an adequate condition. Bottom left is a 6 to 10 year need. So this would need a little bit more. So this would still can be restored. It's not a reconstruction yet, like a now need, but you'd need something a little more intense, like a 2-lift mill and overlay, something along those lines. And then bottom right, we have an adequate road. So there's no structural issues at all. It's a good road. It should have a fairly long service life. In terms of ride ratings, it's basically it's a 10 if you can drive the road without, it's rated out of 10. At the top, you can drive it with no annoyance or discomfort. It's in the 9 to 7 ranges. If there's a little bit of discomfort, generally we say a 7 is if we're driving at the speed limit and you're starting to think the vehicle's starting to feel those bumps a little bit more. 4 to 6 is when you're essentially can't drive at the legal speed limit, or if you are, you're kind of tugging at the wheel. It's not a good feeling. The car's taking undue punishment and hard to stay on the road. 3 to 1, essentially you're driving to avoid big issues, hard to stay on the road. And if the crown is also too steep, it can be in that range. In general, we see most roads here in Ontario in the 7 to 10 range. Occasionally get down to the 6 and 5s, but we don't see a whole lot in the 3 to 1 range. Drainage ratings. So this drawing is taken from our standard OPSS here in Ontario. So you want your ditches to have a 500 millimeter clearance from the bottom of the road structure. So in general, you're looking for about a 1 meter ditch if your pavement structure is assumed to be 500 millimeters. All urban roads with storm sewers are assumed to be adequate, unless we're told otherwise. And in general, a 14 rating would indicate some minor issues. 12 rating, some more major issues or inadequate ditches. And anything below a 12 has to be told, we have to be told essentially from the municipality that there are flooding issues. So those sections are just the ones that flood in the spring. So overall network condition. So roads need results. The goal of the roads needs study was to help provide the following information to help develop appropriate rehabilitation programs. So a breakdown of the overall network, the condition of the network rehabilitation requirements, timing for those rehabilitations, and the costs. So network breakdown. Municipalities network is 45% gravel, and those are largely the rural roads. Low class bituminous or surface treated or tar and chip, it's approximately 37% of the network, and high class bituminous or hot mix asphalt is approximately 18% of the network. And then network by roadside environments. So based on centerline kilometers, it's a largely rural network with 88% of the roads being considered rural. 8% of the network is considered urban, or about 50 kilometers. And 4% is considered semi-urban. So semi-urban would be an urban setting with a rural cross section. So anything with a density of housing with no curb and gutter and an open ditch drainage or ditch sewers for drainage. Network condition. So the structural adequacy of the pavement is a good indicator of network condition. So 69% of the roads or the centerline kilometers, or I guess lane kilometers, was considered adequate. 13% was in the 6 to 10 range, 9% in the 1 to 5 year range, and 9% in the now range. The overall PCI of the network was 70, which is also the council approved target PCI for the network. The network really is in good condition. So network critical deficiencies. So critical deficiencies were aggregated for the various deficiency types. So you have your surface type deficiency. So this is essentially when based on the average annual daily traffic, if a gravel road should be upgraded to a surface treated road, or a surface treated road should be upgraded to a hot mix asphalt road. So we tend to use the average annual daily traffic. So how many vehicles are on that road to kind of determine when the appropriate time is to upgrade those roads to a different surface type. You have your surface width deficiencies. So each set in the inventory manual, based on the class of the section, it should have a certain pavement width. So as you get higher traffic, results in higher minimum surface widths. And then you also want platform widths as well. So just paving, so you're at shoulder rounding to shoulder rounding is not a good way to increase the surface width because you still want that added safety of the platform and shoulders. The next is the structural adequacy deficiency. So that's essentially the pavement condition in the now need category, which would result in the reconstruction of the section. Geometric deficiencies, so inadequate vertical or horizontal curves or stopping sight distances. And then you have your drainage deficiencies. These are all those ones mentioned earlier, which are drainage issues that result in temporary flooding of the pavement section. So it's not a critical deficiency for drainage unless you're seeing actual flooding. So we went through these network critical deficiencies, went through and based on the cost to upgrade those conditions, we're looking at about, right now, the critical deficiencies, we have about $29.5 million in deficiencies. Some of these were categories as multiple deficiencies. So say if a section had a structural adequacy deficiency and a surface width deficiency, that would put it into that multiple deficiencies category. So if critical deficiencies are not addressed, they can lead to shorter service lives and potentially open up the municipality to potential liability. Stuff such as geometric deficiencies, it's kind of tough to fix these in a lot of these cases without taking land. So a lot of these times we try to work around these deficiencies with signs, warning of the potential hazards, that sort of thing. Budget analysis. So the main thing with developing a budget is rehabilitation timing. So the old way of thinking for pavement management was to fix all the worst roads, but this modern philosophy is to keep their good roads in good condition. So it's a lot cheaper to maintain the good roads in a good condition than it is to be constantly reconstructing the worst roads. And you can keep your overall network in a better condition. So this chart just kind of shows that as you get your structural adequacy from the maximum of a 20, so new road all the way down to a 1, each time we move from adequate to 6 to 10 to 1 to 5 to a now need, each of these new need timeframes result in a more intensive rehabilitation option, which is a lot more expensive each jump. Here's our standard pavement deterioration curves. So you can see on the left, you have your do nothing performance of a pavement. It'll start off pretty good, and then you see it starts to drop when you get into like the generally the 12-year range. Then significantly drops, and then it gets into your poor condition pavements. So each time we rehabilitate a road, we see resulting jump in the pavement condition index, and then a cost associated with that. So the area under that curve would be the net benefit to your pavement structure. And then based on the cost of that, we can kind of determine what's the most efficient treatments. And in general, it's definitely a lot cheaper to keep your roads in good condition and apply earlier interventions than it is to wait until pavements deteriorate to a poor condition. So some of the budget analysis results. So we were asked to provide a few budgets. So we did a do nothing scenario. So it took us from our overall condition of 70.3 in 2022 to 35.0 in 10 years. So if we did absolutely nothing, the whole network would deteriorate significantly to about half its current PCI. We ran the budget for maintained PCI of 70. So that is the council approved target and kind of where we're at right now. So what we saw, that resulted in a cost of 12.3 million for the HCB roads and 10.9 million for the LCB roads, which is $23.2 million overall. The reason we chose to try and keep both the HCB and LCB at that target of 70 is generally LCB interventions are a little cheaper, so we didn't want the road matrix just targeting LCB roads and letting the HCB deteriorate. We run it in limited funding. So what this does is it applies the intervention as soon as it hits the PCI trigger. Generally, you see a huge amount of money spent in the first year or two, and then it kind of levels out and you're just doing maintenance from then on, or restoring pavements up to an acceptable level. That resulted in a total budget of 25.3 million over 10 years, with the vast majority being used in the first two years or so. And that took our score from 70.3 up to a 77.6. The proposed budget is $17.4 million, and that's broken down by, what is that, 1.1 million for high cost bituminous, and 600,000 for low cost bituminous, and then we had 40,000 for the general maintenance, crack sealing and microsurfacing. So based on those that budget, the overall score went from a 70.3 in 2022 down to 56.8 in 2032, which is a fairly significant drop. This is a new slide that I started showing in my presentations recently. It's the MTO asphalt cement price index. So the asphalt cement is roughly, I think, 25% of your cost to put asphalt down. That's including the cost of materials and to place it as well. So as you can kind of see, through 2018 to 2020 is fairly consistent, right around that $600 to $800 range. And then we've seen quite the significant increase in the last few years. So the prices do vary with the cost of oil. So if those oils come down, we should see the asphalt cement cost price come down. But yeah, we're trying to get as basically, if these trends continue, we can do less work with the same budget in recent years. And it could be a major concern moving forward. But we're always optimistic that hopefully these prices will come back down to something more reasonable. That's the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions, comments, concerns.
Thank you for that presentation, Dean. I'll look to council then for questions. Start with Councillor Lawrence.
Through Madam Mayor to Dean, these cost analysis you've done, that doesn't include bridge or culvert work, correct?
Correct. It's just the pavement itself.
Yeah, so we can add a lot more on top of that per mile. Thank you.
Councillor Hefner, I saw you.
Through the mayor to Jean. So these figures here are basically if prices are at where they are right now, as opposed to any increases over the next 10 years.
So we do apply an inflation factor. Like those either 3 or 4%. Sorry, it's in the report. I don't have the actual number in front of me.
Okay, and so as it sits right now, we're short about $8 million in our budget, in our projection. Not that center's projection. So I guess we need to follow that. The other thing I had, like this report just speaks to the hard top, and it does not talk about gravel like maintenance or anything like that on those roads, right?
Yes, so the budgets provided were just for the improvements for the HCB and LCB. The gravels are treated under a different budget, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Burst.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is sort of in line with Councillor Heffernan's comments. Things seem to be going up all the time, and I think everybody has budget issues with respect to you're budgeting so much and the actual costs come in substantially more. So are you updating you have a budget book or a cost book? And then you're putting an inflation factor on it, but how often is that updated? Is that updated annually? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, so in terms of we received previous year's costs from the municipality for the actual contracts. We took that into account. And then MTO actually has a very good resource for their roads. Essentially every contract they give, they have you can look up the price of certain types of asphalt, gravel, removing asphalt, that sort of thing. So we kind of look at those recent projections as well, and we try to come up with a reasonable cost for what it's going to cost for 2023. We plugged in the system, then we apply our inflation factor. I'm hoping that, like we were saying, that the AC price index comes back down, and that can give us a little bit of buffer, and we can do more with the money we have. But there's no guarantees on that.
So follow-up question, and I've seen some charts before. Intervene earlier rather than later, and you'll save costs overall.
Yeah, your overall network will turn out better if you intervene earlier. And that's kind of the programs we run are to optimize that. So what Road Matrix will do is it'll run the various options based on the condition. So if it's at a certain PCI, this triggers this sort of treatment, and then it will give you the cost benefit of applying that treatment now, or waiting down the line until we apply a different treatment, or waiting until it just gets to the next PCI level. So once it'll try and optimize that to apply the right treatment at the right time.
So we set the PCI level and we tell you that, or how does that work?
So that was in terms of interventions, there's kind of generally standard acceptable uses. Like you can't do a mill one, pave one, like one lift of asphalt on a completely destroyed road. So there was discussions back and forth with the municipality regarding what do you guys like to do when, suggestions of maybe you should try this, that sort of thing. And we kind of worked at it together.
Okay, thank you very much.
And Councillor Case. Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor, to the team. So just to follow up on these last two questions, on your slide, the MTO AC price index. So off to the side there, you've got the Hi, I'm getting louder. You've got the asphalt cement prices vary with cost of oil consistently 500 to 800 from 2017 to 2020 up to a peak of 1394 in July 2022. So are these the prices that you plugged into your work? I'm just wondering, did you use the 800? Did you use 1394? Or am I thinking about that right on how you plug it in?
Yeah, so this is the overall price for like the asphalt cement within hot mix asphalt, so the binder that's holding it together. Like there's also other costs that go into the total price. Like this isn't your price per ton of actual asphalt cement placed. This is just the binder itself, which is approximately a quarter of the cost to put your asphalt on the road and have it ready to go. But yes, this was taken into account. We kind of saw some leveling off, so we kind of used the prices from 2022 with the assumption that it has peaked, and that's what we were using. So yes, we did take into account 2022 prices.
Thanks. That I didn't figure this was. I figured there was more to it than this, of course, but I just wondered in what you put if you use the peak numbers. So thank you.
Yeah, so the high price in 2022, and yeah, so these AC price indexes are also, I'm sure your people at municipality can tell you, it's when you tender a contract, if you're using say 800, and by the time they pave it, it goes up to 1,000. That's added cost to the municipality. Those get built into the contract, so it is a concern all the time. Essentially, is this going to go up? If it goes down between when you tender and when they place it, you can get a bit of a rebate, which is always nice. But yeah, this is the AC price index is an important thing with asphalt.
Thank you. I don't see other hands. I had a question for you as well, Dean. I was looking at slide number 23, where you have the do nothing and the maintain, and then the unlimited versus the proposed budget. Our PCI is a 70. I see that as the overall score, and I'm interpreting that's our target, and that's PCI that we saw earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if our proposed budget is 17.4 million dollars, I know there's a bunch of statistics based on the different kinds of roads, but do you have any idea what kind of money we'd have to spend to get 56.8 up to 70?
So up to 70, yes, we want to keep it. That's the maintain PCI is 70. So that's you want to spend 12.3 million on your high class bituminous and 10.9 on your low class. So that's a total of 23.2. Your current budget's at 17.4. So based on the current prices, you need a pretty significant increase the current budget in order to keep that at a 70.
Okay, so and we're not it's just 7, yeah. So I don't know the split between which ones are getting done or not done. When I look at the 7, like that maintained is all of that money. 17.4 is allocated in the same proportion then to get to the 56.8? Yeah, I'm just wondering, are we focusing then on the more expensive roads or the roads that are a little cheaper?
The proposed budget is 1.1 million for the HCB and 600,000 for the LCB. So if we want to keep, and then, sorry.
So that's okay. I was just thinking I'm probably getting too much of the weeds here. I was just
That's fine.
That
I can.
The proposed budget is there. I thought, well, depending on how we split it, maybe it's worth doing one type of road before another or not. Yeah.
Yes, if you look at right now, the proposed budget is 1.1 million a year for hot mix asphalt. In order to keep all your hot mix asphalts at a PCI of 70, you would need 1.23 million per year. And right now your low class bituminous budget is 600,000. And in order to keep all those low class bituminous at a PCI of 70, looks like you need 1.09 million per year. So the bigger gap is with your low class bituminous budget. Your hot mix asphalt budget is a lot closer to being keeping it at 70.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there anything else? I don't see any hands, so thank you for that presentation, and thank you for taking care of all of our questions and making it easier to understand.
Yep. Feel free to reach out if you have any more questions. I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Okay, super. Okay, then, thank you very much, and appreciate your time. Have a good night.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we move now to the adoption of the minutes. There's a motion before us that the minutes of Middlesex Centre Council meeting held on the 5th of April, 2023 be adopted as printed. Could I have a mover, please? And Councillor Cates, Councillor Heffernan, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. We can move now to the consent agenda, and the consent agenda is received in one motion. Council members may request that one or more item be removed for further talk or action. There are 3 items here. Is there anything anyone wants to have a chat about? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Burrs.
Yeah, I just want to have some questions on the education development charter study. So
I'm not sure who's going to answer them.
Is it Mr. DeLillo wrote the report, or
Okay.
is there no one to answer questions?
Michael will answer questions if we're talking about the development charges piece. Okay, Tiffany will jump in. Okay, go ahead, Frank. Ask the question. We'll see who the best person is.
Well, okay, if we can't answer it, it's fine too, but is this something new? Is this actually allowed? Because they're looking at taking money off of us to build schools, and that's a provincial, like the province provides that money now, and this is in conflict with Bill 23, which they're trying to reduce development charges, and here they want to, like, we have an education component to our taxes. Can't remember what it was, but just to let everybody know, yeah, the education contributes 13% to our taxes already. Am I correct on this? That this is this allowed? It is. Has it been allowed for a long time, but they just haven't invoked it?
Through the mayor to Councillor Burrs, more than several years ago, but in my time here, we did collect a development charge on behalf of the school board, and they do have the authority to collect development charges. It would be an add-on on top of our DCs. It wouldn't be from what we're currently collecting.
So, okay, so they're going to collect it via development charges through development, correct?
Potentially, yes. Collected at building.
Additional. So this isn't going to hit the taxpayer. No, okay. Makes me feel a little better, not much. Okay. All right, thanks. I think that explained it. I didn't realize that.
Anyone else? Councillor Heffernan?
Excuse me, I'm not sure that anyone answered this question, but it's sort of a comment. So if the ministry is estimating over the next 50 or 5 years that the growth will then exceed the total capacity of the board to accommodate the students. Now, according to this, it's forecasted for each region, which is a county. So that would mean potentially that county of Middlesex may or may not have to deal with this charge, where London would or not. And also, I'm just wondering if it says the total capacity. So, for example, here in Middlesex County, there's room at Valley View right now. There's room at Gilbert, not room at Oxbow, not room at Wilberforce. So Oxbow has room to add addition. That's very Wilberforce, I don't think it does. But with capacity in those other 2 schools, I guess I'm just curious as to how that's going to result in an education development charge or not. So I don't think anyone can answer that here, but curious. I guess we'll find out.
Maybe we should have our school board person come forward and give us a
Trustee?
Yeah. We'll have a chat with maybe somebody can come and give us a primer on what this means. So, but yeah. Okay. Is there anybody else that wants to ask on this or any other item? I don't see any hands. So we have a motion before us that the consent items 6.1 through 6.3 listed on the April 19th, 2023 agenda be adopted as recommended. Mover, please. Councillor Arts and Councillor Hepburn seconding. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on now to staff reports. The first item we have is the request to remove a holding symbol for 13178 Ilderton Road, filed by Andrew Douglas. And we're going to look to Marianne Cabral, County Planner, to provide an overview of the staff report, please. Here you are.
Thank you. Thank you,
Floor
Madam.
is yours. Go ahead, Marianne.
Thank you, and good evening to you and to council. The municipality received a zoning bylaw amendment application to remove the holding symbol from the lands known as 13178 Ilderton Road. The removal of the holding symbol would allow for the development of a multi-unit building within Ilderton. So the precondition to remove this holding symbol is to enter into a site plan agreement with the municipality, and this is to address all details pertaining to the development of the site, including the provision of municipal services, parkland dedication, stormwater management, and so on. So this matter is also related to several other planning applications that council has seen in the past, and it includes another application that's before council tonight to facilitate this development. But at this time, the municipality is in a position to enter into an agreement with the landowner subject to approval of the consent application, and this agreement would be registered on title. So as a result, planning staff are satisfied that this precondition will be met and that the holding symbol can be removed from the land, and they'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that report, Marianne. I'd like to council other questions. Seeing none, we have a motion before us that the request by Andrew Douglas on behalf of 1917155 Ontario Inc. to remove the H2 holding symbol from the zoning of the land known legally as Concession 11, Part Lot 26, Middlesex Centre be approved. I look for a mover, please. Councillor Shipley and Councillor Burrs. All in favor? That carries. And we have a similar item up next. This is a request to remove holding symbols from 10092 Oxbow Drive, filed by Zlinka Priamo on behalf of Oxbow Development Limited Partnership. Marianne, file is yours again. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. Through to council. So as the mayor has stated, this application is to remove the holding symbols from 10092 Oxbow Drive. And Bristol Council is aware that the municipal address was updated as a result of this development. So previously the planning application files had referred to 10072 Oxbow, but now it has been updated to 10092 Oxbow Drive. So the removal of the holding symbols, which includes an H3, H6, and H7, would allow for the development of 50 townhouses on this property. The precondition to remove the H3 is to prepare a noise impact assessment and incorporate the recommendations into the site plan design as well as into the agreement. This precondition has been met by as a result of staff review of the site plan application. The precondition to remove the H6 is to undertake a public site plan review, and this was completed in December of 2022. And finally, the precondition to remove the H7 is to undertake a urban design brief to the satisfaction of the municipality, and staff have acknowledged that this has been completed and incorporated into the site plan design. So as a result, planning staff are satisfied that all preconditions have been met and that the municipality is ready to enter into a site plan agreement with the landowner and then be registered on title. Therefore, it is recommended that the holding symbols be removed from the land known as 10092 Oxbow Drive.
Thank you for that report. Again, I'm looking to council for questions. And seeing none, the motion before us is that the request by Zlinka Priamo Limited on behalf of Oxbow Developments Limited Partnership to remove the H3, H6, and H7 holding symbols from the zoning of the land known legally as 10092 Oxbow Drive, Middlesex Centre be approved. Looking for a mover, please. And second, Councillor Burns and Councillor Cates. Thank you. All in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. Moving on now. We have to move into the Committee of Adjustment. And to do that, we have a motion before us that council adjourn its regular meeting at 6:45 p.m. in order to sit as a committee of adjustment under section 45 of the Planning Act 1990 as amended to consider the minor variance applications listed on the April 19th, 2023 council agenda. And just to give an opening preamble. Oh, sorry. Yes, please. The seconder. Quickly, and that's the arts. Thank you. All in favor? And that carries. Members of the public that wish to receive further notification on the minor variance applications being considered today, I ask that you please send an email to planning@Middlesex Center requesting further notification. Please be advised that comments expressed, written material presented are a matter of public record. If you have any questions on the applications being heard today, we ask that you direct those to the appropriate planner on file. Members of the public that have requested to speak will be given a maximum of 10 minutes to address council and provide comments on the applications. In keeping with our procedural bylaw and our zone policy, I would remind all of our meeting participants to use respectful language and uphold our values of cooperation, trust, and openness. There is an order in which everything happens, the same for each application, and the order is as follows. The chair, that is myself, will ask the planner to explain the purpose of the application and hearing and to present the staff report. Then the applicant or their agent has an opportunity to speak to the application. Next, the public who have registered to speak or who are in attendance will be asked for their comments. Please state your name so that it can be noted in the meeting minutes. The municipal clerk or planner will note additional comments received from circulated agencies and the public not included in the planning report. Then the committee will be able to ask questions of the applicant and or staff. And finally, then the chair will consider motions regarding the applications that we're hearing. All right, then the first item we have tonight is application for minor variance. Dan Fitzgerald is in attendance and will provide the staff report.
Through the chair, thanks committee members for having me here tonight. So item 8.1 is minor variance A27/2022. And as committee may recall, this is an application for minor variance and it was originally heard at the January 25th, 2023 meeting. It was deferred or referred, back to staff based on further discussions to occur on the proposed size of the structure. So the purpose of this application is generally to increase the maximum permitted size as well as height of an accessory structure that's located in the A1 zone. I recommended that the application be referred back to staff previously to work to reduce that overall requested size based on the impact of the proposed structure on this existing residential parcel. The applicant has revised their proposal to the requested size and height for consideration tonight by the committee. So as such, the purpose and effect of the application is to seek relief from the zoning bylaw to the maximum size and height. They are requesting a maximum size of 185.8 square meters and a maximum height of 7.77 meters. And again, the effect would be to establish a new residential accessory structure. So based on the revised proposal, I am generally satisfied that the reduced footprint from the previous proposal could meet tests of the Planning Act. Additionally, the revised height permission allows for increased functionality of the building while also maintaining a smaller footprint and visually maintaining it as a smaller structure on the lot. I would note that the revised comments, that we did receive revised comments provided by the Conservation Authority subsequent to drafting the planning report. They have identified that a Section 28 permit would be required prior to construction based on existing regulatory lands within the boundaries of the lot. Further, it was also brought up that a municipal drain potentially bisects the existing property. As such, it is recommended that 2 conditions be added to the minor variance decision. And in those particular conditions being that the owner confirm that the proposed location of the accessory building be fully located such that it does not impact any existing municipal drain prior to the issuance of a building permit, and that the owner be required to successfully obtain a Section 28 permit from the Conservation Authority prior to the issuance of a building permit. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'm certainly available to answer.
Thank you for that presentation. Is the applicant or their agent here, and do you wish to speak to the application?
My name is Patrick, and I am one of the owners of the property. Thank you for having me. If you have questions or
Okay, thank you. We'll see if anybody asks anything, so I'll move on to the next. Are there any members of the public who have not registered but are in attendance who would like to speak to this? I don't see anyone. I don't think there is. Thank you. So then look to the committee. Are there questions of the applicant or Councillor Huffman? Start with you.
Through the mayor to Dan, just for clarification, on the report in January indicated that this proposed building was going to be larger than the existing house. The existing house was 111.5 square meters, and this building is 185 square meters. So how are we? It's still going to be bigger. I've got the numbers wrong.
Yeah, so through the chair, could be wrong, but I believe the application form referred to the house being in excess of 2,000 square meters. Or sorry, not square meters, square feet. That's correct. But maybe the applicant could provide further clarification on that.
I'm just curious. So so this does satisfy our, like the 111 versus 185 square meters?
So through the chair, generally speaking, that is kind of one of the benchmarks that we do weigh variances against. But what I would say in this case is that existing permission of the size of the accessory building on the lot would already be 165 square meters, regardless of the size of the home. So really, we're looking at an increase of that, 20.8 square meters above that existing permission, regardless of the size of the home.
Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Kings.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Just a clarification. I had some notes from when I read this and the other day. But to Debbie's point, it says on the drawing that the house footprint 2,400 square feet, and it says that the building will be 2,000. So it's not bigger. Because I'm not sure if something I read made me wonder the same question, that I thought that we didn't have the secondary building be larger than the house, but that doesn't show it. The one thing I was confused at, and it doesn't matter, maybe it's the January report, but I have in my notes here that I didn't understand what you meant by, but it's not the same. It said of the 4 tests, did one of them have an answer of no before? And now it's yes?
So through the chair, yeah. Mind if I just address both questions?
Yeah.
So perfect. So yeah, I just pulled up the application form that was originally submitted. So the proposed size of the house, in terms of floor area, is listed as 222 square meters, which would be that 2,400 square feet. So the accessory building in this case as indicated in the report, would be support to the existing principal dwelling, just for clarification. And then in terms of, I lost my train of thought. What was the second? Correct. Yes. So under the original proposal and the original report, we did indicate that the size of the structure would not meet the intent of the zoning bylaw. So the answer to that one was no. I believe the original copy of, or sorry, the copy of the report, the revised report that was posted online did indicate no as well. However, that had changed. That was just administrative error to yes, that it did meet the intent of the zoning bylaw based on the revised size.
Thank you. Confusion. Thank you.
Alrighty, anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Shipley, and then I'll take Councillor Carnes.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Dan. Was the mezzanine in there originally in this? And why are we going another 4 feet higher than the original plan? Is it to do with mezzanine?
Yeah, so through the chair to councillor. So yeah, the original proposal did include a larger footprint of a building and a mezzanine. It did include that as well. This one also does the same. However, it's much smaller in this case. So based on the pitch of the roof, because the building's a lot smaller, they're asking for permission to exceed that height to allow for a more livable, usable space in the mezzanine area.
Thanks, Dan.
Through your Madam Mayor, I don't know if this is to Dan or the applicant. Like as Dan noted, there's municipal drain that cuts somewhere across that property. So when you dig it up to see where it is, it'd be a good idea to have a drainage inspector there, just so that everybody feels good.
Sorry, yeah, from what I heard earlier, that they had, part of the condition was for us, like for myself, to find out where that is. We got to get locates anyways, I'm assuming, for starting the process. So it probably would be able to find in that process, I would assume, or is there another way to do it? I'm not sure.
Yeah, so through the chair, generally speaking, typically the Conservation Authority would hold those records as to where that drain could be based on regulatory areas and drainage areas. So when the applicant works through that process to get the Section 28 permit, they would automatically identify if there is a drain in that area and where it potentially would be located. Then it would be up to the applicant to then physically go and locate on site and place their accessory building outside of that area.
Thank you.
That's all I had. Is there anyone else? Okay, seeing no hands, then we do have a motion before us. And that is that minor variance application A 27-2022 filed by Carlo Carusi on behalf of Patrick Cox and Jennifer Dickinson for relief from the comprehensive zoning bylaw in order to establish a maximum size of 185.8 square meters and a maximum height of 7.77 meters for all accessory buildings for a property municipally known as 10651 Ilderton Road be granted, subject to the following conditions: that the accessory building be placed in the same general location as shown on the site plan attached to the application, and that the owner be required to remove the second access to the lands and restore the ditch, the satisfaction of the county engineer, or seek approval for the second access from the county of Middlesex, and that the owner confirm that the proposed location of the accessory building be fully located such that it does not impact any existing municipal drain prior to the issuance of the building permit, and that the owner be required to successfully obtain a Section 28 permit from the Conservation Authority prior to the issuance of the building permit. And further, that the reasons for granting the minor variance application A 27-2022 request complies with the general intent and purpose of Middlesex Center's official plan and zoning bylaw. Request is minor in nature, and the request represents appropriate development on the subject. Could I have a mover, please, and a second? Councillor Burrs, Councillor Cates, favor, and that is carried. Thank you. Good luck with your project.
For all the, just one question, for all the information that was tonight, I can find on the website, or do I go directly?
Through the chair, you'll be receiving a copy of the notice of decision, and that's going to lay out each of the conditions that were just spoken to by council. So
you don't deal with Dan and so.
Absolutely, you can continue to liaise with Dan. We can expect an email from myself. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Again, good night, good luck. Okay, moving on to 8.2. The procedure is the same again. This is an application for minor variance. And again, Dan will be providing the staff report on that file.
Through the chair, thank you. So application or item 8.2 on the agenda is application for minor variance A8/2023. Got my keyboard. There we go. So the purpose and effect of the application for minor variance is to seek a variance for the minimum rear yard setback requirement. So the applicant is requesting to reduce the minimum rear yard setback to 1.47 meters, whereas the existing zoning bylaw does require a minimum 10-meter rear yard setback when abutting residential uses. The subject property contains existing commercial use known as Pickard's Peanuts. They are seeking to construct an addition to the building to increase the internal storage area for their commercial use. Based on the existing lot dimensions, the rear yard is considered that east portion of the interior side yard between properties. And this is simply because the property maintains frontage along Highway 4. The rear yard is the yard that's directly opposite of the front yard. As a note, the property does gain access though from Medway Road, which I believe may have caused confusion in this particular case. So it is generally surrounded by commercial type uses as well as existing legally non-conforming residential properties that are abutting to the east. The lands are zoned village commercial C1 zone in the bylaw. So I have reviewed the proposed variance against the Planning Act tests, and through the review, I'm generally satisfied that the variance does meet tests, the 4 tests of the Planning Act, and I am recommending the reduction to the rear yard setback be approved, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. I'm going to ask if there's an applicant who'd like to speak to this application. I don't see anyone. Okay, no, unless there's someone here who wants to speak to this file. Okay, so no one wants to speak to it. There are no additional circulated agencies comments, and I'll look to the committee then to ask questions of the applicant. Councillor Case.
Thank you through you, Madam Mayor, to Dan. Thanks for clearing up the rear yard because I got a lot of notes here about the rear yard. I was reading it, looking at the picture, and so then just to clarify, the 28-foot addition is almost the whole entire normal setback. Going to cover up setbacks normally 32.8 feet, and this is going to be 28-foot addition.
Through the chair of the council case, yes, you're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else? I don't see any hand. In that case, we have a motion before us, which is that the minor variance application A8-2023 filed by Pickard's Peanuts Limited, ARBA, to permit a reduced rear yard setback of 1.47 meters for a property municipally known as 14331 Medway be granted, and that the reasons for granting the minor variance application A8-2023 include request complies with the general intent and purpose of Middlesex Center's official plan and zoning bylaw. Request is minor in nature and request represents appropriate development on the property. If I give mover, please, and a second. Councillor Cates and Councillor Bird, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you, and thank you for that, Dan. Moving on to 8.3. This is the minor variance application for 22643 Van Neck Road. And we'll look for the planning report on that one too, please, Dan.
Through the chair, thanks, Madam Mayor, members of the committee. So just point of clarification, item 8.3 is a concurrent minor variance application, which is A6-2023, as well as a consent to adjust a minor boundary, which is consent file B3/2023. So the application that's before committee is with respect to, again, that concurrent minor variance and consent application. The purpose and effect of the consent application is to convey a parcel of land for lot addition purposes, having an area of approximately 728 square meters, which is proposed to be merged with the abutting lot municipally known as 22651 Vinek Road. And the effect would be to create a larger lot where the former church was for technical purposes. With that said, the applicant has also proposed a minor variance application concurrently to the consent application, which does seek to reduce the minimum lot size as well as frontage requirements for the agricultural parcel that would give up land as a result of the consent application. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce that legal non-complying size to 16.92 acres and also a broken frontage of approximately 102.7 meters, which would result from a successful consent application should it be provisionally approved by council. And again, the effect would be to confirm that the lands conform to the zoning requirements through the variance. So the lands are located within the agricultural area on the west side of Vinek Road and then south of the intersection at Ilderton Road and Vinek Road. They are bounded generally by agricultural lands on all sides. The lands that would receive the lot addition contain a former church, which is proposed to be turned into a childcare facility, which, as a note to committee, is a permitted use in the institutional zone. The remnant lands are agricultural in nature and contain a significant woodland, which is also identified as a natural heritage feature, and they are largely regulated as well by the Conservation Authority. The remnant lands are zoned agricultural A1, and the lands that would receive the lot addition are zoned institutional. They are both designated agricultural in the official plan. So as noted, the applicant is seeking to expand the institutional lot for the purposes of establishing a child care facility, which is a permitted use in that existing zone. It is noted that the existing size of the lot is not large enough to accommodate the parking area as well as the private sanitary services in the format of a septic system. As such, they are proposing the boundary adjustment to include that 728 meters square portion of land from the agricultural lot, which is generally located to the north of the site. Given the above, I have reviewed the application based on the boundary adjustment policies of the official plan, as well as the resulting technical reasons in this case. However, upon review of the application, and as indicated, the lands are regulated by the Conservation Authority, being the Sauble Bayfield, the St. Clair Region Conservation Authority. An environmental impact study, as well as a hydrogeological study, were prepared by the applicants in order to determine the potential impact of development on this portion of lands, as it is regulated. It's also identified as a significant woodland. Given the findings of the study, the Conservation Authority has requested additional information from the applicant pertaining to the conclusions that were presented between the two different studies. So given the existing natural heritage system policies in the local official plan, I am of the opinion that the application should be referred back to staff in order to provide the applicant with the ability to revise the studies and consult further with the Conservation Authority to ensure that a severance is feasible in this case. So therefore, I am recommending that the application be referred back to staff to consult further with their environmental consultants as well as the Conservation Authority.
Thank you for that presentation, Dan. I understand that Mr. Kevin Miller is here. He's, if you'd like to speak to this or ask questions. Yep.
Madam Mayor, councilors and neighbors, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. As Dan mentioned, there has been a small glitch with our reports that our consultants prepared. There's a error in the number of trees counted and referred to in one report versus referred to in the other report. That's what's there is brought to my attention. I have asked for that to be checked and be submitted. What I'm asking for tonight is additional approval. We can't do anything with the land unless we can get that approval from St. Clair right now. So just we've held this land for a little over a year. We're taxing on maintaining it. We just kind of want to get moving for the company that wants to come in. It's basically runs out of the company. We need to get moving on this. So basically, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Is forward once we get permission.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure I know how we can proceed with respect to your request. We won't make an approval. We would wait for staff to prepare a report. And based on the conversations and the information that's exchanged between the authority and in consultations with you and the planner, the report will come back to council with a recommendation. At that time, there might be a conditional approval based on something that is decided amongst you, or it'll be, whatever the recommendation at that time, we will be able to make a decision then. Okay, at this point, though, we do have a motion to refer it back to staff. Did I see a hand here? No, okay. Oh, sorry, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair, thanks, Madam Mayor. So the one thing I might want to point out to the applicant is, so this, like tonight, would fulfill your public meeting requirement for the application. So any report that subsequently came back does not have the same notification requirements and that information. So it would just be a simple staff report that does come back confirming that studies do match, that the conservation authority is satisfied, and if they're satisfied, then we're satisfied. Natural heritage policies are being met. So I just want to provide that clarification. It is a bit quicker in the process to come back to council because the public meeting component would occur tonight.
Does anyone have any questions that they want to clarify? Okay, in that case, we have a motion before us, and that is that minor variance application A6 2023 filed by Kevin Miller on behalf of Larry Weatherhead and Diane Weatherhead for relief from the comprehensive zoning bylaw in order to establish a reduced minimum lot size of 16.92 acres and a broken frontage of approximately 102.7 meters for a property legally described as part lot 9 and 47 part 1 on the reference plan 34R2205 in the municipality of Middlesex Center, County of Middlesex, is municipally known as 22643 Van Eyck Road, be referred back to staff for further review. We could have a motion, a mover and a second for that motion. Councillor Shipley and Councillor Arts, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. We'll see you soon.
Thanks very much, and Dan, thank you.
Okay, and now we have another application for consent, and again, Dan, that file is yours.
Through the chair, thanks to Mayor and members of the committee. So the item 8.4 on the agenda tonight is again a concurrent committee of adjustment minor variance application, as well as a request for a consent. And that in that case is a request to amend the previous consent. So as council may recall, consent was requested for 115 Prince Street through application B14/2022, and which sought to sever a residential infill lot on January 25th, 2023. The applicants, which was provisionally approved. So the applicant is now requesting to revise the lot size based on viability for development of the parcel due to the setback constraints, which generally occur on corner lots. So as such, the applicant is proposing to amend consent application B14/2022 with this new amended consent application B for 2023, where they are seeking to establish the same provisionally approved infill residential lot, however, with increased revised frontage along, in this case, Prince Street of 19.94 meters, as well as a revised area of 671.7 square meters. And the remnant parcel in this case would be revised to a frontage of 20.74 meters and an area of 709.8 square meters. So effectively, in order to accommodate the additional 1.5 meters being added to the east interior side yard, the applicant is also requesting that concurrent minor variance application through A7/2023, which does seek to reduce the remnant lands, the west interior side yard of the existing home, from 3 meters as required by the zoning bylaw to 1.5 meters. This reduction would permit the revised boundary of consent application B4/2020 to increase the building pocket while also permitting that reduced interior side yard to comply with the zoning for the remnant single detached dwelling that already exists on the lands. So I have reviewed the concurrent applications for minor variance and consent against the Planning Act. I am of the opinion that the reduction to the interior side yard for the existing remnant lot would meet the 4 Planning Act test for minor variance, as access is generally still maintained to the rear, and an appropriate distance to neighboring lands can still be provided. Additionally, I would note that the existing dwelling would maintain sufficient parking and would not require vehicular access to the rear of the property based on the existing driveway that is already on the lands. And in terms of consent, staff are of the opinion the revised boundary is considered appropriate to provide more flexibility as well as a larger building pocket for the construction of a future single detached dwelling, given the existing constrained setbacks for exterior side yard being 8 meters in this case. So as supported by the planning reports, I am satisfied that the proposed variance and revised consent application are appropriate and desirable, and would meet the intent of the 4 tests of the Planning Act. So thank you, and I'm certainly available to any questions.
Okay, thank you for that report then. No members of the public have registered to delegate on this report, but I'm wondering, is there anyone in the public, in the gallery who'd like to speak to this? I don't see any hands, so I'll look to committee then. Are there questions? I'll start with Councillor Case.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor, to Dan. So I just want to really clarify this because, you know, the other one where the house was barely 10 feet away. So if we look at the attachment to the agenda, the B14-15-2022, the drawing, and it shows the three properties on there. So first of all, in the top right-hand corner, there's a chart, and one of the things is in red, part 1, side yard setback 1.5. Is that what we're talking about today?
Yes, so through the chair to Councilor Cates, you're exactly correct. So in this case, part 1 is the existing home,
Yes.
which constitutes the remnant lots and consent applications. And the 1.5 meters is what they're showing there as the deficiency to the existing zoning, should the revised consent application be approved.
So it's the deficiency, or it's how much you want to have. So instead of being 8 meters apart, 8 meters off the property line for their house to start, it's only going to be 1.5 meters.
So through the chair, just point of clarification, the existing side yard setback in this case, based on zoning, would be 3 meters on one side and 2 on the other. So in this case, they're essentially seeking to reduce their required 3 meter interior side yard setback to 1.5 meters through the variance.
Okay.
So it's a reduction of 1.5 meters
Okay.
from 3.
Okay, because you had said, at some point in there, you had said 8 as well. So tonight, we've already looked after number 3 in the past, number one and number two, really, we're just talking about the space between. So basically the new house could start 1.5 meters off of the property line, not off of the end of their house.
So through the chair to council case, and maybe just for clarification for everyone. So yeah, part two on the severance plan is the revised consent application that we are discussing tonight. So what they're seeking to do is essentially add 1.5 meters to the entire western, or sorry, in this case, eastern boundary for part two, which pushes the house 1.5 meters potentially closer to that conceptual property line. But there's still required to be a minimum of 2 meters on that interior side yard for a new dwelling, wherever that proposed property line goes. The 8 meters is in reference to the exterior and front yard setbacks for that new lot that we're talking about, which does generally constrain development for a building pocket. Usually we see 6 meters as the standard, and that would be the length to provide an appropriate vehicle parking space for a car. In this case, is 2 meters beyond that. So that's kind of the limiting, or is being a limiting factor to them for proposing a new house on the lot.
Okay, thank you. So through you, Madam Mayor, to Dan. So just to clarify, we've got, as per the drawing, we've got 2 meters and 1.5 meters. So we've got 3.5 meters total, which really is probably going to be from the end of their house to the over to the other house.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else? Okay, I don't see any other questions from committee, so we do have a motion before us, and that is that minor variance application A7 2023 filed by LDS Consultants Inc. on behalf of QA Core Prestige to permit a reduced minimum side yard setback of 1.5 meters for a property municipally known as 115 Prince Street be granted, and that the reasons for granting the minor variance application A7 2023 include the request complies with the general intent and purpose of Middlesex Center's official plan. The request complies with the general intent and purpose of Middlesex Center's comprehensive zoning bylaw. The request is minor in nature, and the request presents appropriate development on the subject property. Do I have a mover, please, and a seconder? Councillor Burrs and Councillor Cates. All in favor? That is carried. Okay, and oh, that's it for our. That's for that. Just lost my page here. Second. 6. Here we go. Public meetings. We're done with that portion. Now we have to move into public meetings. And the motion before us is that the Committee of Adjustment adjourn at 7:23 p.m. The Council resume their regular meeting, and that the Council move into public meetings at 7:23 p.m. pursuant to the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended. Consider the applications listed on the April 19th, 2023 Council agenda. Again, there's a little bit of a preamble. Members of the public that wish to receive further notification on any of the applications that are considered today, I ask that you please send an email to planning@middlesexcenter.ca requesting further notification. Please be advised that the comments expressed and the written material presented are a matter of public record. If you have any questions on the applications being heard this evening, we ask that you direct those to the appropriate letter on file. Again, members of the public that have requested to speak will be given a maximum of 10 minutes to address council and to provide comments on the applications. In keeping with our procedural bylaw and our zone policy, I would remind all of our meeting participants to use respectful language and uphold our values of cooperation, trust, and openness. The order of proceedings is the same as we had before. So we start with the planner to go over the report, and then the applicant or agent will have a chance to speak. Public members who have registered will be asked for their comments, and then public attendees to the public meeting in person will be called on for comments. Then I'll look to council for questions, the applicant, delegates, and our staff, and then I will call for motions regarding the applications. So the first item up tonight is consent application B3 2022 for 2264. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. Yes, we still have to do this part. I just threw myself off. This is for 22643 Van Eck Road and the recommendation. So we have to go through the process here, but we have recommendation on that consent piece. Sure.
So through the chair, just to jump in to provide some clarity for members of public who are on the line and members of council. Previously, you heard our planner present with respect to two files which had a combined minor variance and consent component to them. Because of the nature of our procedural bylaw, the committee of adjustment that council was just sitting as only hears minor variance applications from a decision stand. Any decisions respecting consent files must be passed by council during the public. So that's why we resolved to move into public meetings, and we're now going to consider the consent portions of those applications, two of which we just heard a moment ago. I hope that makes sense for everyone.
Again, the first one's going to be the Van Eck Road. That was the daycare. So the motion that is before us is that consent application B3 2023 filed by Kevin Miller in order to sever and convey as the lot addition 728.43 square meters, that is 0.07 hectares, from property municipally known as 22643 Van Eck Road to be merged with an abutting lot municipally known as 22651 Van Eck Road from a property legally described as part of Part Law 9, Plan 47, Part 1 on reference Plan 34R2205 in the Middlesex Center, Middlesex, and municipally known as 22643 Van Eck Road, be referred back to staff to further review. Mover, please, and a second. Councillor Arts, and that is carried. The second item is the one that we just heard for Prince Street, and the consent motion for consent there is that the consent application B4 2023 filed by LDS Consultants in order to amend consent application B14 2023 to sever a lot residential lot with a frontage approximately 65.4 feet and an area of approximately 671.7 square meters in order to facilitate the construction of a single detached dwelling on a severed lot on retained having a frontage approximately 20.7 meters along Prince Street property, physically known as 115 Prince Street, be granted, and that the consent B4 2023 be subject to the 15 conditions that are noted in the staff report. Further, that the reasons for granting consent application B4 2023 include proposal submitted to the convention policy statement, works to the County of Middlesex official plan, and the Middlesex Center official plan, and subject to the condition the proposal complies with the Middlesex Center comprehensive zoning bylaw. Could I have a mover, please, and a second to that? Councillor Shipley and Councillor Heffernan, all in favor? And that's carried. Okay, now moving on to the zoning bylaw conformity update statutory public meeting. So Matthew Rodriguez, senior planner with WSP, is already online with us, and he's going to provide the overview presentation for us. The floor is yours, Matthew, when you'd like to begin.
Thank you so much, members of council. Can you hear me okay?
Isabel.
Fantastic. My colleague Matt Alexander might be in the waiting room as well if staff are able to have him join the meeting as well.
Through the chair, Matt, I can confirm that we've invited Matt to join us on the line and you're okay to proceed. Thank you.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much. Let me just share my screen really quickly. Bear with me 1 second. I've lost the button. All righty. All right, I should be sharing my screen now. Can I get a quick thumbs up if you can see that? Fantastic. Good evening, members of council. Thank you for having us. We're looking forward to speaking to you this evening about the zoning bylaw conformity update at this statutory public meeting. As the mayor suggested, my name is Matt Rodriguez, a senior planner at WSP, and I'm joined today by my colleague Matt Alexander, who you may recall from the official plan review project, also with WSP. And I'll actually pass the floor over to Matt now to walk through the beginning portion of our presentation.
Thank you, Matt. And thank you everybody for attending this public meeting and members of council. We're going to go over a little bit of background on this project, and I'm sorry about that. Just to say thanks for everybody for coming. Our agenda tonight is to go over some of the background related to this zoning bylaw update, give an overview of the key changes, and then get right into discussion and next steps. So let's go to the next slide. The project team through this project has been led on the municipal side, municipal and county side, by Michael DeLillo and Marianne Cabral, and on the WSP side, myself, Matt Alexander, as the project manager, and Matt Rodriguez as the senior planner. And I think we can go to the next slide. So the draft zoning bylaw amendment was prepared in order to update the zoning bylaw to implement some of the official plan policies which were adopted by council last year. The purpose of this statutory public meeting is to introduce the zoning bylaw conformity update for the municipality of Middlesex Center. We will talk a little bit about the key drivers of the zoning bylaw conformity update, walk through the draft zoning bylaw amendment and highlight the key changes proposed, and share how comments can be provided and the next steps in the process. This is a statutory requirement under the Planning Act, and it's also a good practice to update your zoning bylaw periodically. So the current zoning bylaw was adopted in 2005. It currently regulates land use across the municipality. This is intended to implement, as I said, the Middlesex Center official plan, which was amended through Official Plan Amendment 59, but has not yet been approved by the county. The zoning bylaw update is also intended to address some minor housekeeping edits and modifications to the zoning bylaw to improve its function and make it easier to use. So as mentioned, Council adopted Official Plan Amendment 59 on May 18th, 2022 to implement changes to the official plan to address the growth in the community as well as changing needs in land use. The zoning bylaw, as I mentioned, was first adopted in 2005. It's been amended a number of times since then, but it's always good to do a new update whenever the official plan is updated. It's a good idea, and it's the law. So under Section 24, subsection 1 of the Planning Act, zoning bylaws must be updated to conform with the official plan, and it is required to be updated within 3 years of an update, but of course, it's better to do it right away. Zoning bylaws are, of course, one of the primary tools to implement the official plan. As we've already seen today, the zoning bylaw shapes how development can occur within the municipality. And so that's why it's important to keep it up to date. Next slide, please. The zoning bylaw establishes provisions that regulate the use of land and such things as the size, height, and location of buildings and structures within the municipality. Just coming out of that Committee of Adjustment meeting, we heard about setbacks and rear yards and all those other provisions that are set out in the zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw divides the municipality into various zones, which regulate the types of uses that may be permitted and how those uses should be located on the property. Next slide, please. So I'm going to hand it back to Matt to talk about some of the key changes that we're proposing in this zoning bylaw update.
Thanks so much, Matt. And as he mentioned, we'll walk through in this presentation some of the major changes and provide an overview of some of the minor changes, but certainly this isn't an exhaustive list of some of the changes that have been made to the bylaw, but rather some of the key conformity and major changes that both we thought important to present, but also based on what we've heard from the community and stakeholders since releasing the draft. So the first topic that we'll cover tonight is on-farm diversified uses. And so on-farm diversified uses are located on a farm and are secondary to the main agricultural use. Examples of these include agritourism, produce stands, and value-added uses. As council may be aware, updates to the provincial policy statement and municipal official plan support the introduction of on-farm diversified uses. And there's policies in the new official plan that provide criteria and conform to some of the provincial guidance for these uses. So as part of the zoning bylaw update, general regulations for on-farm diversified uses, or OFDUs, have been added to section 4.26, which limit the scale and size of the use to ensure that they remain secondary. And so there's been, so while we've added permissions and some added flexibility in this bylaw, it is important to have regulations that limit the size and scale of the use. And so we have permitted OFDUs in agricultural zones and have set out sort of specific on-farm diversified uses to help provide some general guidance. Moving on to additional residential units, which are often referred to as granny flats or second units. These can be either a second unit in a detached structure. So perhaps you have a main house and then in the detached garage, there's a unit, or a second unit within the main house, such as a basement unit or, as I said, a granny flat. Changes to Ontario's Planning Act and the municipality's official plan support the creation of additional residential units. And this continues to evolve with some of the recent provincial legislation that we've seen in recent months, which have very clear legislative requirements for additional residential units. General regulations for additional residential units have been added to section 4.2. So there's a specific section of the bylaw amendment that has all of the regulations for that use. And under this, a maximum of 2 ARUs are permitted per lot, subject to criteria, with one being that only 1 ARU is permitted in a detached structure, alongside single detached, semi-detached, and townhouse dwellings. And so so that is in compliance with the Planning Act, and that can actually be generalized instead of street townhouse to just townhouse, and making sure that we're covering off that sort of general row house category of uses. And so this is certainly a change in the zoning bylaw that helps implement the Planning Act as well as the official plan. We also took the opportunity through this update, again in line with the official plan, to look at the dwelling types that are permitted in Middlesex Centre. And so the bylaw as it stands today does not contain definitions for different types of dwellings, such as stacked townhouses and live-work dwellings that are being built or proposed in the municipality. And so the official plan through OPA 59 supports a wider variety of housing types in neighborhoods. And so in conjunction with city staff, we identified some of those gaps where definitions may be required for different dwelling types. And so what we've done is added definitions for stacked, back-to-back, and clustered townhouse dwellings, and permitted and updated permitted uses in the urban residential 1, 2, and 3 zones to promote greater flexibility in dwelling types. And so in the UR, in sort of the UR1, UR2, largely related to ARUs and duplexes, but certainly in the UR3, contemplating those stacked townhouses and back-to-back townhouses, for example, within the bylaw itself. Another key change, again, that precipitates from the official plan is changes to zoning in the village centers and hamlets. And so updates to the municipality's official plan support a greater mix of uses and densities in the village centers found in urban and community settlement areas such as Elderton, Delaware, and Kamoka-Kilworth when compared to the hamlets. So there is this distinction between the village centers and the hamlets. Policies for the hamlets, such as Melrose and Bryanston, continue to permit some non-residential uses. The goal of these policies is to create walkable, complete communities that provide housing for all stages of life. And so in the current zoning bylaw, the same zone or one zone applies to both hamlets as well as village centers. And so there's one zone that applies to these two different geographies, whereas in the official plan, there's different policies now that apply to each. So as part of the zoning bylaw update, we've taken the opportunity to transform the C1 zone, the current C1 zone, to be the village center zone. And so within that zone, greater heights are permitted, about up to 4 stories. We've also restricted new automobile-related uses to help create a more Main Street environment, a bit more walkable, and helping achieve some of the policies of the official plan. And also setting out requirements based on the official plan to limit the size of some commercial uses in the village center areas, including a maximum gross floor area of 500 square meters. And so in the hamlets, where it was previously or currently zoned C1, a new C4 zone has been set up, which matches the in effect C1 regulations. So if you're in the hamlets, the code and the name of the zone has changed, but the regulations for the intents and purposes of this have not. And so we've made a couple minor housekeeping tweaks to some of the permitted uses, but in large part, the regulations and permitted uses remain intact rather in the hamlets. Looking towards electric vehicle parking, again, the official plan supports the introduction of requirements for electric vehicle parking spaces for medium to high density residential and employment uses. And certainly as council may be aware, the use of electric vehicles is growing across Ontario, and many municipalities are looking at how they can prepare for this and also make sure that new and future development can help accommodate this shift. So in section 4.27 of the bylaw, new regulations have been added to require what we're defining as designed electric vehicle spaces in the C1 and UR3, which is the higher density residential zones. And so what designed electric vehicle spaces are, it's not that you have to provide the charging equipment, but rather to allow for future installation. And so we're not saying you have to, provide that infrastructure, but rather making sure that at some point in time in the future, should say the owner of the spot or the owner of a building want to add it, they can do that without having to rip out walls and redo concrete work, for example. And so it is intended to provide that basis, a bit of a rough-in of sorts for EV charging spaces. Looking towards agricultural zones, and so this is one slide that we've added in response to some of the comments that we've received since the public open house. As council may be aware, minimum distance separation formulae or MDS requirements are in place in the municipality and in Ontario to separate land uses and to reduce incompatibility concerns about odor from livestock facilities. So the current bylaw uses the restricted agricultural A2 zone to prohibit livestock uses close to the villages. And so really the only difference between A1 and A2 is that the provision of livestock, which is allowed in A1, but not in A2. But based on the fact that MDS or minimum distance separation formula requirements are in place to address that concern, and in consultation with county and municipal staff, it was decided that the A2 zone was no longer necessary and just was adding an extra zone to the bylaw that wasn't being used. And so it was merged with the A1 zone. The lot and building requirements remain the same. So it's the same lot area, lot frontage, for example. And then again, the MDS requirements will address that livestock compatibility issue. To avoid having an A1 zone and an A3 zone without an A2 zone, we've renumbered A3 to A2 with no other sort of changes other than the minor or other changes that you'll see sort of in terms of on-farm diversified uses, for example. And so for those who may be watching and have seen that their property has changed from A3 to A2, it really is a numbering and more of a housekeeping matter than a major change in permissions. So I hope that provides a bit of clarity on changes to agricultural zones. The last slide that I'll go over are just a brief overview of some of the housekeeping amendments that were made that weren't necessarily tied directly to the official plan. As Matt alluded to, this is a great opportunity to amend other standards and look at it at a bigger picture to reflect issues identified by staff as well as other trends. And so what we've done is update barrier-free or accessible parking requirements. We've updated outdated or incorrect section references and outdated terminology in the bylaw. We've updated requirements for accessory buildings and structures, as well as added requirements for visitor parking for some residential uses. And so certainly the proposed zoning bylaw amendment outlines a number or all of these changes in more detail. I've alluded to this a couple times now, but we thought it would be good to update council on the public open house that was held just a couple weeks ago. It was attended by just over 30 people, and I think even more than that registered to have their names on the list. And so we certainly received questions regarding changes to the A2 versus A3 zone. So tried to provide a bit more clarity this evening about that change. There was quite good support for changes which provide more housing types. And both at the meeting and since the session, comments have been received regarding the proposed zoning regulations for ARUs and garden suites. So we'll be taking a look at those to make sure that there's no minor make sure that they're as tight as possible and make sure that nothing's been missed. We've also received comments regarding the proposed changes to the UR1 and UR2 zones. As well as ARUs built on lots with private wells and septic systems. And there are requirements and standards in the bylaw related to that. We also received comments indicating that further changes may be required to support different forms of townhouse developments. And I believe some of that is reflected in the comments that are part of the council package this evening. And so any comments that we received at the public open house, as well as in the days and weeks following, are being monitored and logged by the project team, and we'll be preparing a table that demonstrates how we've either updated the bylaw or a response to the question or comment as before this is brought forward back to council. So we've received a few pieces of correspondence, which has been great and certainly much appreciated. So in terms of next steps in the process, we released the draft amendment back in March within the requirements of the Planning Act. On April 5th, a public open house was held, as I just went over. This is a good opportunity just to present the bylaw and just make people aware and receive those issues and comments. And we're here today at the statutory public meeting. From here, we will be finalizing the zoning bylaw amendment throughout the rest of April and into May, and we are targeting council adoption in spring of 2023. Again, we'll wait to see the comments that come in and make sure we're providing ourselves the time to make sure that we address them. Once it's adopted by council, the bylaw amendment will be on hold until such time as OPA 59 is approved by the county. And so that timeline is TBD for now. And then once OPA 59 has been approved by the county, the zoning bylaw conformity update will come into effect. And so we are looking to bring that forward for adoption, but there's still a couple points after that as OPA 59 is still pending. So for those watching, also for members of council, the municipality's project webpage has all of the details and project documents, including the bylaw amendment and a red line version of the zoning bylaw. And that link is middlesexcenter.ca /zoning-bylaw-update. And again, that has all of the documents that may be of interest. We do encourage, again, anyone who's watching to submit comments to planning@middlesexcenter.ca. That's the general email box. And again, we'll log and provide response to those as we move through revisions. We are requesting comments from the community by the end of April, around April 28th, just to give us time to digest them all and to consider them as we revise the zoning bylaw amendment. And all of those comments will be considered from the public open house and the statutory public meeting in the revised zoning bylaw amendment brought forward to council. So with that wraps up my presentation to council. Happy to answer any questions alongside Matt if there are any.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. And I've got a number of people who want to comment, so we'll start there. And the first person up is Alexandra Lawson.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, just you go ahead and you've got your 10 minutes and then we'll cut you off, I guess.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Okay. Good evening, Mayor DeVete and members of council, as well as consultant WSP. My name is Alex Hawson, and I'm speaking on behalf of Sifton Properties this evening. I would just like to speak to a few key components of Sifton's letter submission that was provided to the municipality dated April the 12th. So we're in favor of or in support of a number of proposed amendments to the zoning bylaw, inclusive of the addition of definitions to allow for alternative forms of housing, provisions pertaining to additional residential units and garden suites, as well as expansion of uses in the 3 urban residential density zones. But we do have concerns or comments, I guess, with regards to the following. So section 4.2 of the proposed red line amendment to the bylaw, it doesn't provide an opportunity for additional residential units outside of street townhouse dwellings. So we're wondering if it would be possible to relook at this to see about permitting ARUs in other forms of townhouse dwellings, so that you could have them in, say, vacant land condo developments, for example, where you have townhouse dwellings within those developments. I know that would be on a private road versus public, but we think that it would be something to consider as part of this process as well. So we would appreciate if council could consider that as part of the process. Section 4.9 of the bylaw only permits garden suites on lots which have frontage on a public road. So kind of similar to my previous comment, we're wondering if there could be consideration for garden suites on lots fronting onto private roads. I'm kind of thinking along the lines of vacant land condo developments as well, which operate very similar to a draft plan of subdivision. It's just that you're on the private versus the public road. So if council would be able to consider that as well, that would be appreciated. Section 7, 8, and 9 of the bylaw, which speak to the 3 urban residential zones, provide for a blanket lot coverage right now of 35% for the main building. We know that there's quite a few permitted uses that are being added, which are more compact, higher density forms of housing. And we're wondering if it'd be possible to relook at these sections to consider lot coverage specific provisions for each permitted use, or I guess a combination of uses if there's a figure that is able to cover off a few, just to account for the fact that they're higher density, more compact, and that the 35% may not be sufficient in those cases. Also under section 9 of the bylaw for the UR3 zone, it appears that there is a few provisions or regulations that may be missing with regards to those permitted uses that have been added. We did provide more detail in our letter, but if that section is able to be reviewed, that would be appreciated as well. Also under section 9 of the bylaw for the UR3 zone, it does provide for a blanket density of 30 units per hectare. So kind of similar to my past comment, there's more compact, higher density forms of housing that are being added to the UR3 zone. And it's in our opinion that we should relook at, or that council and consultants and staff should relook at the maximum density that is permitted to account for those more compact, higher dense forms of housing. And then lastly, under section 9 as well, applicable to the UR3 zone, it does propose removal of townhouse dwelling from this list of permitted uses. This type of dwelling has previously been used in the past by Sifton for our various vacant land townhouse developments, vacant land condo townhouse developments, I should say. So it's unclear to us kind of moving forward what kind of use we would be looking at using for those developments if townhouse is no longer a permitted use under the bylaw. So I guess just looking for clarity on that, and if we're to be looking to alternative forms of housing such as cluster townhousing to accommodate those types of developments, or if zoning interpretation will be different. Right now, it's based on a lot by lot basis. The cluster townhouse looks to be on a block basis, so it may just be a different interpretation moving forward with this new bylaw, but we're mainly just looking for clarity in those cases of those certain types of development. And then lastly, Appendix A to our letter outlines a property owned by Sifton just south of our Timberwalk subdivision. These lands were redesignated to residential and special policy area 29 as part of OPA number 59, which has been adopted by council, but not approved from our understanding. So we request as part of this bylaw amendment to conform with the adopted official plan to rezone those lands from office, commercial, and light industrial to the urban residential density first and third zone to establish dual zoning as part of this bylaw update and to ensure conformity with the adopted official plan amendment. Thank you for your time this evening and consideration of these requests.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I'm going to look to Jeff Wolanchowski to present his comments.
Here we are, Mayor and members of council. I hope you can hear me.
You're ready to go. We can hear you, and
Perfect.
I'm ready to clock on.
All right, I appreciate you having me today. I'm here on behalf of the Masonry Council of Ontario. We are the trade group representing the brick, stone, and block sector in the province of Ontario. In respect for council's time, I'm going to try and keep my remarks short and sweet tonight. We're here as part of the initiative we've been doing called Building Tomorrow's Heritage Neighborhoods Today. We've been going all across Ontario, talking to communities about ways to ensure the communities they're building are beautiful and built to last. You know, we know that municipalities are the only forever stakeholders in homes, businesses, any building that's built in the community. So long as they stand, they will continue to be part of your community and they should look good and hold their value. So as you finalize the zoning bylaw, we'd urge you to look at it to ensure that you're properly implementing some of the policies that were passed in the new official plan recently around design. There were policies written into the plan expressing intention to use urban design guidelines at the secondary planning stage. Now, guidelines like this often speak to exterior design factors such as preferred exterior cladding materials, as well as articulation, massing, setbacks, and other features. Previously, this was something that's been done by communities at the site plan control stage. However, with changes brought in by Ontario Bill 23, the scope of site plan control has been made much narrower as it pertains to exterior design. So we think the zoning bylaw is an opportunity to make sure that we're conforming with the new reality. Communities want to build beautiful neighborhoods that people feel good about living in, and the province wants to build more homes faster. We think there's ways to accomplish that through the zoning bylaw by setting standards for building exteriors that are objective and clear. In many jurisdictions, this is common practice. It can be done in Ontario through zoning, through the statutory authority to regulate character. Some communities have taken powers like this and developed full-on form-based zoning codes, but for others, it's simply a matter of setting some basic standards for typical building typologies, or establishing pattern language within, for example, an established neighborhood. Ultimately, what I'm trying to get across is that we're in new territory on planning terms, looking to meet very aggressive provincial housing targets, which is going to require a lot more density in both new and established neighborhoods. So long as that's true, I think everyone should expect anything that we build to look good, last long, and reflect well on the neighborhood and the broader community. The ultimate goal is that your work guides the people who will build tomorrow's heritage neighborhoods today. And setting standards for exterior design is going to determine whether or not those buildings are going to stand the test of time. So we'd encourage you as you go forward with finalizing the zoning bylaw to look at your policies around urban design, ensure that they're going to be properly implemented, and make sure that you've got character patterns and durability on your mind as you go forward in finalizing this policy. Those are my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for those comments and appreciate your time. Is there anyone else? There's no one online right now, so I'm going to ask, are there members of the public in attendance or virtually who are listening who wish to comment? Please use the raise hand feature on our electronic meeting now, or raise your hand if you're in the gallery to come forward and speak. Calling once, calling twice. Anyone out there? Just give me a minute.
Through the chair, I can confirm there are no raised hands currently on our call, and so if you wish to proceed with council comments.
Thank you for that, Mr. Clerk. Look to council. Comments, questions, observations? Yes, Councillor Burrs, go ahead.
Okay, so there's a lot there. What's gonna happen is WSP is gonna take up all of this. Otherwise, they'll report back to us, correct?
Speak to that, Matt.
Sure thing. If I heard that correctly, in terms of next steps, we'll take all of the comments that were heard live tonight and in writing to either the clerk or the planning office. And so this is the first opportunity for council to see it. And then we'll bring forward with staff a bylaw for adoption, hopefully in short order, to get this actually adopted.
All right, so
and
who
Sorry.
follows up with the people that submitted? Was there any follow-up where we send, here's our official response to your letter?
Through the chair, they don't receive an official response, but what they are included on is the notification list and future decision list, meaning that they'll be in receipt of the decision, and that decision will set out any next steps with respect to appeal rights, etc.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair, through the mayor, could I add something to that?
Floor is yours, go ahead.
Thank you. Just to clarify as well, we'll be providing responses as part of the council adoption package to those comments. And so not a formal sort of written response in the moment, but we'll have a table that tracks all of the comments that we've received and either how they've been implemented in the revisions or perhaps not, and at least acknowledging it and perhaps setting out or clarifying if there was some confusion there.
Okay, thank you. I think I saw another hand. Go ahead, Councillor Arts.
Through your, excuse me, through your Madam Mayor to Matt, these proposed provincial planning statement that we got a few weeks ago, is this going to affect any of these zoning bylaws? Or like, is it a moot point until they pass this, or hopefully don't pass this stuff?
I may pass this to Matt A.
Yes. So through you, Chair, Madam Mayor, the proposed planning policy statement or the planning, provincial planning statement that was released a couple of weeks ago. The timeline on that is that it's open for comments until June 6th, and then they anticipate that it would not come into effect in whatever form until this fall. And so at this point, we don't know what the final version of that document is going to say. And based on the timeline that Matt laid out in the presentation, we could easily have this zoning bylaw update adopted before that comes into effect, and potentially in effect, have the zoning bylaw update in effect before that new PPS comes into effect, depending on the county's decisions. And so the process for bringing a zoning bylaw up to date with a new provincial policy statement has to go through a few different layers. There would be no requirement for municipalities across the province to initiate a zoning bylaw update immediately. Instead, it would follow through the process of the Middlesex County official plan updating along its regular timeline to be consistent with that new provincial planning statement, and then Middlesex Center going through its official plan update and then its zoning bylaw update. And so you're aware of how long it has taken to update the official plan and the county official plan in the last couple of years. That is essentially the timeline that I would anticipate playing out once again after everything comes into effect. So there would be no need at this point to ensure that the zoning bylaw update that we're presenting here needs to be updated to meet consistency with this draft document that was released 2 weeks ago. I hope that clarifies or answers your question. I can elaborate if you like.
We're good, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. That was a begrudging. Yes, go ahead, Councilor.
Sorry, one more question. So let's say the people that have put in input, they don't like what the final decision is. Is there an appeal process, or do we have that final decision?
Through the mayor to the councillor, there would be appeal rights to this bylaw. It's not a comprehensive or a new comprehensive bylaw, but rather it's effectively a big housekeeping amendment to the bylaw. And so there would be certain things that would be non-appealable, including, for example, additional residential unit regulations. So the Planning Act sets out what municipalities at a minimum must do. And so we've implemented that, or that will be what is in the final adopted version. So that those regulations can't be appealed, and so there would still be some appeal rights, and all of that was spelled out on some of the notices. And again, anyone who signed up through the process will, and as a clerk indicated, will receive any notices and will be kept apprised of any decision by council.
Is there anything else? I don't see any hands, so I'd like to thank you both for coming tonight, gentlemen, and giving us an update on and presentation on the where we're at with the changes to the bylaws. So we'll look forward to, I guess, the next iteration if we know what we're going to be reacting to. So thank you kindly.
Our pleasure. Have a good evening.
Thanks a lot. Good night.
Good night. Okay, moving on to number 9.2, which is the application for consent with respect to 13178 Ilderton Road. And as I understand, Dan, you will be presenting that report.
Through the chair, yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor and members of council. So item 9.2.
Second one.
There we go. Now we're
Got it. Oh.
Okay. So yeah, so consent application B7/2023, which is item 9.2 on the public meetings agenda tonight, is a consent application specific to the property at 13178 Ilderton Road, which we have already previously heard from tonight under the staff report section. So staff report section for the holding symbol removal, and several other applications have come before council previously. So what this particular consent application is essentially to establish a private easement between two privately owned parcels of land, which do neighbor each other in a bud. So the easement is needed as part of the detailed site plan design and review, which would accommodate a temporary stormwater management control area due to the limiting size and nature of the lot on Ilderton Road. Both private parties are in agreement to the necessity of the easement, which will only function to allow that temporary stormwater ponding and overland flow. Municipal staff have recommended that the applicant seek an easement through site plan agreement process in terms of the stormwater control discharge, and reason being is that through consent they can't discharge it on title, so that will remain there essentially forever. So staff are in support of the proposal, as it will help to achieve an intensified and efficient format of development for the lands that are located at 13178 Ilderton Road. Thank you, and if anyone has any questions, I'm sure they do.
Thank you for that report. I don't believe it was registered. All right, and the applicant is here to speak to the application if we need. No members of the public have registered. So if no one here wants to speak to it prior to that, then I'll look to council to ask any questions on the, go ahead, Councillor Heffernan.
Mayor to Dan. I'm just not clear on this. So this is an easement, part 4 is an easement across the fairground. And it's for temporary storage of surface water. The surface water is on 13178. It's stored on there, or temporary. Like, I'm just not really understanding. I know there's a retaining wall that was put in years ago to prevent water coming off the municipal, I'm assuming the pavement was put in around the arena. Retaining wall was put in because they were getting overwhelmed with their septic bed, but not usable. So I'm just wondering, like, how is this working? What are we doing now?
Don't mind, I'll take this one. So through Madam Mayor to Councilor Heffernan. So it's actually, there's about a 2-foot strip at the bottom of the wall that's actually on the Ag Society's property. That's what the easement is over. So it's at that lower elevation. So when the water ponds on 13178, once it hits a certain elevation, it'll utilize that, essentially that 2 or 3 foot strip that's on the Agricultural Society property. Just because it's at the lower elevation. If the wall was right on the property line, it wouldn't be an issue. No, it's because there's a small portion of the Agricultural Society that's at the low elevation.
Anyone else? I don't see any hands and no one else. Okay, so we've got everyone then. I can go ahead and read out the motion. That is that report CAO 10/2023 regarding the consent easement for 13178 Ilderton Road be received, and that the consent on behalf of Ilderton Agricultural Society in order to establish a servicing agreement for infrastructure in favor of 1917155 Ontario Inc. to service the lands at 13178 Ilderton Road, with the easement being located on session 11 in the municipality of Middlesex Center be granted. And that the consent be subject to the 7 conditions that are noted in the staff report, and further that the reasons for granting the consent include those proposals consistent with the provincial policy statement. Proposal conforms to the Middlesex Center official plan and the Middlesex Center, Middlesex County plan and Middlesex Center official plan, and subject to the proposal complies with the Middlesex Center comprehensive zoning bylaw. Is there a mover, please? And Deputy Mayor Brennan and Councillor Burrs, all in favor? And that is carried. Okay, thank you very much. We can move on to 9.3, which is an application for zoning bylaw amendment. And I have Marion on the file here. She comes. Okay, Marion, we're on 9.3 now.
Perfect, thank you. And through you to council, the municipality received a zoning bylaw amendment application for a temporary use zone for the lands known as 21176 Vanek Road. And this is located on the east side of Vanek and north of Egremont Drive in the hamlet of Melrose. So the purpose of this report is to make a recommendation on the requested rezoning application. And this is to permit the construction of a new single detached dwelling while living in the existing dwelling on this property. The temporary use zone is requested to last for a period of up to 3 years. And upon expiration or completion of the new dwelling, the existing residents would need to be removed from this property. The subject land is approximately 0.75 acres in area and is surrounded by existing residential uses to the north, south, and east, and then agricultural lands to the west and beyond the hamlet area. This property does contain an existing single-family home as well as a detached garage and is serviced by private septic as well. So this application is generally consistent with the PPS County Official Plan and Middlesex Center Official Plan as it relates to permitting a single-family home in hamlet areas. This application was circulated to agencies, area residents, and staff. To date, we have not received any correspondence from area residents or agencies identifying concerns with this application. Municipal staff have requested that the applicant submit a deposit of $15,000 and enter into an agreement with the municipality to ensure the removal of the existing residents. So as such, planning staff have determined that the requested zoning bylaw amendment application to establish a temporary use zone for a period of up to 3 years is consistent with all applicable planning policies, including the Middlesex Center official plan. Therefore, staff recommend the application be approved and that the owner enter into an agreement with the municipality and submit a deposit of $15,000. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. I will note that the applicant is available for questions, but I will look then, is anyone in the gallery wanting to speak to this? No, okay, and members of council, your questions? No one has questions. In that case, we have a motion before us for the zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 06-2023 for a temporary use zone filed by Corey Paquette to permit 2 single detached dwellings on one property for up to 3 years to allow a new residence to be constructed on land known as 21176 Van Eck Road be approved, and that the owner be required to enter into a new temporary use agreement with the municipality and submit a deposit of $15,000 to ensure the removal of the existing residence. Do we have a mover, please, and a seconder? Councillor Burrs, Councillor Cates, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. Alrighty, 9.4, this is the consent to sever, and Dan, this is your file, if you'd like the floor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of council. So the purpose and effect of consent application B2/2023 is to sever a lot from an existing single detached dwelling. The proposed would permit the creation of a new residential lot with a proposed frontage of approximately 15.5 meters on Simcoe Ave and an area of 711.49 square meters. The retained residential lot would have a frontage of approximately 21 meters on Simcoe and an area of approximately 960.79 square meters. And again, the effect would be to create a new residential lot for the purpose of establishing a new single detached dwelling, as well as retaining the existing single detached dwelling on a remnant parcel. So the subject property is located within the settlement area of Kilworth. More specifically, it's located on the south side of Simcoe Ave, which is west of the corner at Simcoe and Queen in Kamoka. The lands are surrounded by residential developments, which are generally predominantly in the format of single detached dwellings. It's designated settlement area according to the County of Middlesex official plan and residential by Middlesex Center's official plan. The land is zoned a site-specific urban residential first density exception free zone in the comprehensive zoning bylaw. So generally the provincial policy statements, county OP, as well as the local official plan, support land severances within existing settlement areas as long as services are capable of existing to the proposed lots. The 3 policy documents support intensification as well as infill of existing lots where it is deemed appropriate to do so. The applicant has indicated that the proposed lot frontage would require a minimum of 24 meters based on existing zoning. At 15.5 meters, any decision of mutual consent would be subject to the requirements of a variance. The proposal would represent intensification of existing residential lands, thereby reducing the needs for the municipality to expand settlement boundaries within agricultural areas. So with that said, and as indicated in the planning reports, I am recommending approval of consent file B2/2023, subject to the conditions that are outlined in the planning report. Thank you, and if anyone has any questions, available to answer.
Thank you for that presentation. We don't have the application or agent here to speak to it, but I will. Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. If you would like to make comments, it's your opportunity to speak. Yeah.
Evening, thank you for having me and thanks for your time. Just here, I thought just kind of run you through the few more details as Dan mentioned. Obviously, we require the minor variance for the law frontage, but certain things that we took into consideration coming up with this proposal is obviously addressing the greater need of housing and more affordable homes. Now, this land, the way this the existing housing rate is built, kind of only sits on the other half of the lot as it is. So with the severance, it would not require any structural changes to the home, and it will not stop or it will not stop any other uses that are being currently taking any current usage of the side yard as it stands, just the side yard. Obviously, also this proposal, when we came up with it, we wanted to take into consideration the neighbors and adding an extra house with the privacy and all that stuff. So we proposed a greater setback from the neighbors to the severed parcel. That way, they have a 3.05 meter between the next neighbor, the south neighbor, and then the proposed building to accommodate for the privacy. And obviously, we want to. Our proposal is not in any way intended to cause any damage to the neighborhood. We want to make sure that our designs will take that into consideration. We will follow any guidelines for the urban design. We'll also be very careful in the construction process of things, and with the privacy, we are the greater setback into consideration. And we look forward to adding financial benefits to the neighborhood and also to the municipality with adding another home with the with new property tax being added as well. Overall, again, the whole idea is to kind of move forward with the municipal approach of offering more affordable homes and taking use of existing parcels, existing bigger parcels, and adding more value to them, especially because the existing infrastructure can accommodate it as such. I'm here, I guess, discuss any ideas and answer any questions. Thank you again for having me. My name is Salim from the.
Thank you, and I apologize for missing you before.
It's all good.
Okay. Are there members of the public who are in attendance or in person or virtually? And if you're, okay, go ahead, you'll be next.
Right off the bat, I'm completely on my comfort zone.
Sorry, I missed that. Is that?
Name's Bill Galloway. I live at 136 Temple Avenue. I'm 100% against it. It's going to damage the value of our place. There's also a hedge in there for about 4 years. That's been far out. I have chain link fence by the hedge that will be destroyed. So at the very least, I think I should have the owners replace that with a pressure treated privacy fence. Preferably something more affordable. One thing though, we'll give the privacy fence. I don't want to.
Maybe just stay for a minute because if council wants to ask questions, they may want to ask you a question as well, okay?
Yeah, if I can give it something.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Mr. Gowan. Is there anyone online who would like to jump in? And if you would raise hand feature, put the hand feature on, or okay, so
All right, I think I may be live.
Hi there. The floor is yours, Mr. Vanderwall, if you'd like.
Perfect. My name's Ken Vanderwall. I live at 137 Simcoe Ave, so right across the street from the proposed development, and right across the street from my good friend Bill, who was just on. I'd submitted a written submission already, and subsequent to that, in the agenda, I was able to find a submission of what the proposed drawing looks like. So along the same lines as Bill, certainly I did make note of the idea of having squeeze it in homes in Komoka. It's certainly something that's going to cause us to lose a lot of greenery in the area. That said, you can alleviate that sort of thing by having the builder put up a privacy fence, as Bill had suggested, in order to try to make good fences, keep good neighbors. So that's certainly something I'm in support of. The second piece I was looking at, and the real concern I've got here is the setback. And I know the applicant had spoke to it a little bit. So I took a look at the drawing provided for the proposal on page 247 of the agenda package. So that shows the proposed dwelling and the proposed layout of the lot. So the first issue I'm seeing here on the drawing, it shows the proposed two-story dwelling with a setback of 16.3 meters. But when you look a little down, a little further into the matrix, what you actually see for parcel 2 is a setback of 16 meters. So I think that might be an oversight, which should probably get some clarification before we go ahead. So we've got parcel 1 at 12 meter front yard setback, parcel 2 at 16 meter front yard setback. So this drawing that we've got here is certainly misleading. And that's something that should probably be investigated. I think it would certainly go a long ways to consider, given this lot needing so many minor variances. So we've got minor variances on almost every side. Certainly having a setback to match the neighbors, to match Bill, to match Rob Jonkins on the other side would go a long ways to making sure that these infill lots actually make sense in our community. So that covers what I'd submitted in writing in pretty good detail, and we'll look to the council to follow that up.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, there is no one else that's waiting to come on. So I will look now to council to ask questions and speak to the issue. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor, I'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a clarification point. The gentleman setting up the microphone. Did you say a 40-foot high?
Preferably, yeah. I know you won't get it that high. As high as it can go.
Well,
I don't know if it's 7 feet or what it is.
Certainly not.
I was joking when I said 40.
Okay, thank you.
Next, go ahead, Councillor Shipley.
Good Mayor to Dan. Am I reading this right? Is the setback the same for both houses that I'm reading as 16.31?
So through the chair to Councillor Shipley, so that's what they're showing as a concept on their design plan. But just keep in mind, the setback that is shown there is not setback that's required in zoning. So the zoning setback for lands that are zoned QR13 is 8 meters. So they're well beyond that 8 meters, showing it at 16.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? Councillor Cates.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Galloway and Vanderwall. I just got to compose what I want to say to you. I understand. I live down the road. I understand the big change when things are going to get infill. I had it happen beside my house too, and it's what we're supposed to do from the provincial policy plan, and it's the new way, and that's the I don't know if sad is the word, but that's kind of where it comes from. And so I just wanted to ask Dan, through you, Madam Mayor, to Dan. As mentioned, we've got the 3.05, but so what's on the drawing and what's on the matrix maybe are two different things, as I'm understanding. So which do we go by?
Through the chair to Councilor Gates, yeah, so good point. So what's being shown on the, I guess, the proposed concept plan really is contingent off of a number of variables occurring, and one of those being that variances get issued for all of these setbacks that they're looking for reductions for. So the one thing I would note is that the first column kind of in the table there, you got your provisions, and you got your required. Required is what is currently required to be met in terms of the zoning provisions for that particular zone for any development on a property. So if they were seeking to establish a situation where they're not meeting those particular requirements, they would need to come back to the Committee of Adjustment to propose a variance, which is then obviously subject to another public meeting and wait. What we're really looking at now is the lot size appropriate to allow for development on this particular parcel, albeit based on this proposed lot area, we already know it's going to necessitate at least one variance. That being the variance for the existing dwelling to the interior side yard between the new lot.
So through you, Madam Mayor, to Dan. So that's kind of, I think you summed up where my what my head is thinking here, because so the drawing then is, as you say, with the variance, because even on the existing lot, we've got a proposed 1.5 car garage at 1.22. So that's going to be moved close to the property line, closer than what's normal right now if you were just building garage, correct?
So through the chair of council case, yes, that is correct. The only variance that really comes into play right now for consideration in terms of the consent is really the proposed reduction to the interior side yard setback for the existing dwelling, which is that 1.6 meters.
Yeah, so then we've got the two close together. I understand the reasoning on the side to give more space to the neighbor next door. So today we're just doing the lot basically as the 50 point would be.
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct. So at the 15.5 feet, we would know already that as a condition of the consent, they'd have to seek a variance to reduce that frontage requirement. It meets the minimum lot size requirement at 960 square meters. It's required to be 930. But we also know that based on where that lot line is being drawn with the existing dwelling, that would also necessitate at least one more variance, and that being the interior side yard setback reduction for the existing dwelling at 1.6 meters to the new lot. So really, there's two variances that would be necessitated at least in establishing this lot fabric, and then anything else would be beyond that requirement based on a development scheme that's proposed for the land.
So can you back up just for a second? What's the front one that you're mentioning?
So through the chair, so the front yard variance requirements, because the existing zone in the UR 13, it requires a minimum frontage of 24 meters. So in this case, the retained land is 21, and then the proposed land is 15.5. So we know that at least approval of or provisional consent approval for this plan would then necessitate at least a variance to reduce that minimum front yard requirement.
So, Madam Mayor, so if the what I'm just not, well, it's not that I don't understand it, is can a person just build a skinnier house?
Through the chair, yes.
So, okay. That's the part, I guess, that some of these that I'm just not, we say okay to 50, which I know that we have lots of other 50s, but then it comes back and now all of a sudden it's getting narrower and skinny, narrower and closer. So I guess I'll just leave my comments there for now. Thank you, Dan. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so through the chair, maybe that's just a good point to clarify again. All the other variances that they're showing in their concept plan would not be necessitated by the lot fabric. That's a necessity of their intended development of the site. So the only variances that would be required based on this lot fabric is that reduction to the interior side yard for the existing dwelling, which is a reduction from 3 meters to 1.6. And then secondly, the reduction to the front yard, sort of to the frontages across the two lots. Anything else would be beyond the scope of this potential provisional consent as a format of development of the lands. So whoever is going to build something, they would need to take that into consideration. And the committee at that time does not have to issue those variances if they so choose. They can base it on the existing zoning. And it would just be an individual who was building would have to then comply with those limitations.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else? So Arts?
Through your Madam Mayor to, I say this from Dan and Sue, I think what Sue's getting at is you can approve this, but you still have the ability to shape what's to come.
Through the chair, yeah. So absolutely, in terms of the new building, yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thank you.
If there's no one else, last call, then we do have a motion here with respect to consent application. And that is the consent application B-22 2023 filed by Dominion on behalf of 140132221 Canada Inc. in order to sever a residential lot with a frontage of approximately 19.94 meters and an area of approximately 15.5 meters on Simcoe Ave and an area of approximately 711.49 square meters in order to facilitate the construction of a single detached dwelling on a severed lot and the retained having a frontage of approximately 21 meters on Simcoe Ave and an area approximately 960.76 square meters from a property known loosely as 140 Simcoe Ave be granted. And that the consent B-2 2023 be subject to the 16 conditions that are noted in the staff report. And further, that the reasons for granting consent application B-2 2023 include the proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement. The proposal conforms to the County of Middlesex official plan and the Middlesex Centre official plan, and subject to the conditions, the proposal complies with the Middlesex Centre comprehensive zoning bylaw. Do I have a mover, please? Deputy Mayor Brennan, Councillor Arts, all in favor? That is carried. Okay, that is the last item on our public meetings. So the motion before us is that the public meetings adjourn at 8:38 p.m. and council resumes the regular meeting. Vote, please. Councillor Shipley, Councillor Arts, thank you. All in favor? And that is carried. Much. Now, there are no notices of motion. There are 7 items in the correspondence section. Is there anything here that anyone wishes to speak to or comment on? I don't see any hands. The motion here is that the correspondence items 12.1 through 12.7 listed on the April 19th, 2023 agenda be received as information. Do a mover, please? Councillor Heffernan and Councillor Cates, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And did you have council update for us, Deputy? Yes.
Quickly, there was a tender approved for steel beam guide rails along with the bridges. The long-term care home service accountability agreement that the province must have in place for continued funding from the province was approved. Surplus vehicle disposal of 10 ambulances that are been replaced were put up for sale. Emmerich Gas was looking at doing a $200 fee for locates for contractors, and the Ontario road supervisors objected to this being causing undue hardship, and so Emmerich did withdraw that. So there's not going to be any funding for that or for that. Federation of Canadian Municipality Board of Directors, Councillor Michelle Smivert from Temp Center applied to be able to go on that board, and that was approved. We had several delegations that day from OMAFRA, KPMG, the audit company, and the work plan for employment benefits. We had those there. Middlesex County Demand Transportation Needs Assessment Study funding from the province will continue to 2025 with some slight adjustments. The stops in Tempsford and Thorndale aren't doing too well, so they're looking at rerouting those and possibly having one come up through Illerton as a public transit. We had a report on accessibility rules and responsibilities of the board members and that, and what the county is responsible for. The Middlesex London Paramedic Service Service Awards were going to be in May, but that is now canceled, and it's going to be held in the fall. Thank you.
And thank you, Deputy, for the update. Any other business? I don't see anything, so I guess the last thing is bylaws. We have 4 bylaws, and the motion before us is that bylaws 2023 numbers 040 through 043 listed on the April 19th, 2023 agenda be approved. Mover, please, and second. Deputy Mayor Brennan, Councillor Cates, all in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. And the last motion before us is the Council for the Municipality of Middlesex Centre adjourns the meeting tonight's meeting at 8:42 p.m. Councillor Burns and Councillor Shipley, thank you very much. All in favor? Alrighty. Thank you very much, everyone. That is carried, and that's it for